Well, it's not working in prod. Indeed, it's not working in prod. Well, it's not my problem. It works just fine on my machine and on the dev server. Well,
I told you all systems are ISOs. And if it's working in dev, it's working in prod.
it's ISO?
Oh yeah, essentially, pretty much almost.
Almost? What do you mean, almost?
You know, there's maybe a very small gap in minor versions, and for some plugins. Nothing particularly important.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's show. Man, I'm super excited to have one of my favorite guests back on today. Liran, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Doing wonderful. It's been a good week, a busy week, but productive week. Yeah. Well,
Is
man,
is it the week that you get the pink duck on your desk?
Yes.
Is it that
yeah. Yeah. It's like the I don't know if you ever did this, right? You ever work old school where you had like a build. We used to have a bear, and you passed it around the build bear, right? And if you had the build bear, you were allowed to do builds, and no one else was allowed to do builds, right? And you went and put it back up, right? Yeah, because you had these check-ins that were talking. Yeah, so CI was not a thing back in the day, right? Anyways, yeah. Well, man, super excited to have you on. We had you on, 2 weeks ago? Last week was our community all hands, but before that, we had you on talking all things security and Node. And excited to have you back. But for those that haven't met you yet, do you mind introducing yourself real quick? Tell people about it.
Sure. So my name is Liran. I'm a developer advocate here at Sneak. Happy to do this chat today with Peter, talking about Node and security in containers. So part of the things that I do is, as an advocate, basically a lot of community work, a lot of conferences and these kind of things. Actually, recently I was pinged by the Sneak folks about doing a thought leadership piece on supply chain security for some CISO events. And I don't usually do this, very high level thought leadership pieces, but that one was a really fun one to do, because it made me basically just get all of the security incident stories, all of the things that were happening, and when I put it in one slide, I was like oh my god, we're doing really really bad. It's fun. So I do a lot of these things. I do a lot of research. I love reading security research papers from academia and things like that. So that gets me involved in things like the Node project, the WAS project, and just generally, on conversation around app security and web security in general. So let me ask you, Peter, how many users have enabled as a percentage two-factor authentication on NPM in 2019? Run any number you want.
Okay, I'm gonna go
1.5 million packages today, but back then maybe 1 million or something.
Okay, I'm gonna say it's low. I'm gonna say 10-20% maybe.
Okay, I like the optimism there. How about
it's even lower?
7.1% in 2019.
Wow.
How about 2020, January 2020? So this is just fresh off. What do you think the number is?
Man, my I want to say it's higher, but I'm gonna say it's the same. I'm gonna say it's the same, roughly the same.
I like how the optimism doesn't stick on you. It's like now you realize how bad we're doing.
Yeah. I have no faith in us developers out there anymore.
Not at all. As a developer yourself, you could just say that out loud, right?
Yeah, I'm allowed to say that. Okay, you can pick on your own tribe.
Cool. So the number for 2020 is on NPM. What is it? 9.27% or something. So grew by 2% or whatever. Yeah. And this was just earlier today from those slides that I just picked out for that session. And it's a lot of stories around these kind of things that just happened, security incident, the event streams and all of those things. It's a really great way to basically survey the status of open source security.
Yeah, that's crazy. 2 points, 2-point gain in a year.
Yep.
Yeah.
We could do better, right? So hopefully we're doing this now in terms of raising awareness for container security and things like that. So this is part of us trying to help all of this ecosystem do better.
Yeah. I wonder what that is, and I don't want to dive too deep into it, but I wonder if it's just painful, right? I think that's my first gut reaction, that it's an extra step, it's painful, right? It's where you have to do 2FA right in the middle when you're trying to do something,
Yep.
right? Breaks your your stream of consciousness or whatever. I don't know, but maybe that's not a good excuse. But anyways, yeah, interesting. And and just you see in the news, I think just about every security company in the world is getting more funding. Every time I look at the news, there's a Series A, Series B around security, DevSecOps. Yeah, it's pretty.
I lost track on Snake's funding. It's like serious XYZ by now.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Well, cool. Well, I'll shut up because you know me. I'll keep talking. We can chat forever. I love talking to you. But you have some really cool stuff for us today. Kind of continuing on from 2 weeks ago. So if you weren't with us 2 weeks ago, go up to our YouTube channel, Docker Run with 2 R's, and you can watch the last program. Did some really cool stuff. Even if you're not a Node developer, still watch that, right? The concepts are still the same. It's just a different language. But we are focusing right on Node today and 2 weeks ago. But yeah, are you ready to jump into it? Ready to show some?
Yeah, I mean, just zipped off of my coffee, so I'm good. I think.
You're good now.
We'll see.
Right on. All right. Cool. Well, whenever you're ready, I'll take it away. Let me bring
there
up the screen here. Perfect.
Yep. And just like you said, Peter, I think this is a good continuation. It's like a part 2 of that session, and we're going to do a recap on it. But I did want to start from the basics of why do we even talk about container security, right? Because containers are they're convenient, lightweight, fast technologies to achieve isolation, portability, scalability, a lot of abilities. And it's replacing, virtual machines continuously, right? We're seeing this trend that more and more companies are choosing to containerize and Dockerize their applications, which is great. It's probably not going to stop anytime soon as well. The thing is, right, we containerize because of this race to the cloud, right? To enable them to build cloud native applications, also often referred to as this digital transformation, which you sometimes hear about. All of this contributes to the accelerated use of container technology because how does it look like when we want to containerize our applications? So it starts off with our own code, our own homegrown intellectual property and business logic that we want to achieve. Like say this example, right, which is a small piece of code used as a Node.js job worker, maybe, that reads a message off of a queue and convert images. It's simple enough. And we're going to get to a stage where we are going to live hack a container in different ways. So, this is just the intro to staying tuned of what's going to unravel here. But then we layer it off, right? We don't just ship that piece of code as is most of the time. We will then layer it up with some dependencies that help us, get things working out. So we add, a web framework like Fastify and other web frameworks and or dependencies. Our application stack at the moment just, got a little bit bigger. But then we package it up, right? This is now a container. We can easily deploy it. We can reproduce it. We have cross-platform compatibility. We want to scale it up really quickly or scale it down as we need to. This is great. But, what does it entail, right? This is all really good. And containers, like many things in software, are another layer of indirection or abstraction. So we have all of these benefits. And our focus here is basically how do we build secure containers? How do we do the best practices and follow this right? So what it actually takes, I guess, to build a secure container at this point? What should you ask yourself? Are you building it correctly? Are you choosing the best base image possible for your container to run in production? Are you monitoring it for existing vulnerabilities? And of course, are you maybe securing it at runtime? And ask yourself how many of those concerns, which is definitely not a comprehensive list, but a very basic one to begin with. How many could you just check that box and say to yourself, I'm absolutely confident that this is what I'm doing, the best way possible. So let's break down, some of these approaches and learn how we can secure a container by basically breaking into it and hacking all the vulnerabilities that exist in some containers.
Nice.
Yeah, let's do this. What do you think? Let's build a Docker image for production. How hard can it be, right?
Simple. Easy button.
I like how you set it up.
I need I need the easy button graphic, but I don't have it. All right, sorry.
Can add it in post editing.
Yeah.
So this is where we started off last time, right? This is a very basic, simple, usually provided in tutorials over the web that you just read maybe yesterday. And this is what it looks like. And functionally, it works. This is, for all intents and purposes, if you're using this for non-production environments for learning, this is a great starting point. It is simple. It is simple to start off with Docker. This is great. There are, however, right, if we want to build this and deploy this, this is where, me and Peter will say, just, take, this is a disclaimer, right? You do not want to go on with tutorial-based stuff into production. There's probably a lot of disclaimers that were left off or best practices. So while it works, this is where we are going into things. So first of all, right, you're using from Node, which is, not reproducible builds, which we covered last time. You're using all the time that you'll build this and, deploy the container. You might be getting new images because Node is basically Node latest as a tag, and you're getting things that are, not reproducible. When you're copying things, what are you actually copying? This is a great example to start off with, but what happens if you have, .config, .env, very sensitive information that you might be putting in that container? And what happens if there's a path reversal vulnerability in the container? At that point, this is a web service, someone can read off those files. So, these are why you should figure out what you're actually doing. npm install is fine, maybe in a sense, I have, more best practices in how to use, the secure npm ones. But again, in a container, when you build it for production, you want to actually use things like npm CI, prod, and things like that to have reproducible builds. And lastly, we're getting to this point of if you're just running off with cmd npm start or cmd node server.js or cmd bash script that spawns things off. These are all examples of what you should probably avoid in production. And this is where we this is where we stopped last time, right? This is where we said this way doesn't support graceful shutdown and doesn't for the Node applications. And it's good to start off in your base images for your development needs, but for production you actually want to support better ways of doing that. And the reasons for it are no signals going into the apps themselves, and so on and so on. So for all of those, if you wanted to go into all of the reasons and how to build those right, we did that in the previous episode, which you could go into that, the Docker playlist and find all of this there. But now really, what is so hard about, choosing the base image? So I'm going to skip through some of those things because we went through them, and this is a large software footprint and all of those things. And we went through all of those. And really what I want to get into is, how do we build containers without leaking sensitive information? Now, one of the ways that we have done this before is, multi-stage builds. They're a great way to kind of move from a simple config file for Dockerfile, basically, into a more separated, separation of concerns of an image file, if so to speak. But not only that, it also provides us a way to use, one bigger image in our build stages versus a smaller one, and more purposely built for production image. So to look at a little bit about code, look a little bit on code and see what I actually mean, right? Here is an example where you might be starting off with, a simple Docker file, right? This is where we basically left off last time. And my question is we moved into this npm CI on, minus only production. And what if you need private packages, right? This takes you into the point where you might need to pull something from a private repository, like maybe you host them on npm, but as a private package. And then you need to supply it with an authentication token that you have created for your, your team to be able to access those private packages, and not anyone else could do them. So when we do that, this is putting us a little bit at risk, because at that point we're basically hard coding all of this, our token into this Dockerfile configuration. So it's not something we want to do. But at that point, before we even get the other stages, as we're going to build some stuff live here, I do want us to start experimenting some of it. So let me get into, there we go. There we go. This is what I'm looking for. So what we should be doing here is running this command, right? This is what I want to run. So let's just take it and put it here. Really just want to build this and see what is going on. And should have left off this last time, so this should be okay. So good now.
Famous last words, Liran.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a good memory exercise from it. Like remember how I named that tag last time.
Yeah.
I don't see it, but Node.js tutorial. I think it. There we go. Actually, can remove. Can maybe use some cache. Let's see how it goes. Of course, it's not gonna work out of the box because. Oh, okay. Obviously.
Ah, there you go. Yeah.
Copy paste, like that's ever gonna work.
There we go. Look at that beautiful build X.
Look at this. Okay, so we've done this, right? This is if we had any I don't know, private packages wherever, going back to the code base here. Let me make this like that. Yeah, we've provided this auth token, whatever we made up, and write it into .npmrc, and now we can actually install whatever we have in package.json that is private packages. But you don't really want to do these kind of things, right? Because basically hard-coded config here.
Right.
So how about we move into this kind of way to do it? Let me make that bigger. Things like, now I can actually define an argument and build it with this argument. So this data does not live in source code or wherever you store Docker files. Let me go ahead and try to do that one. This is basically the npm token, and we'll build it with this. Yeah, I'm just going to copy some of it. Let's see if this works.
There it is right there. See it dump out to the, see the token in the build X. Looked like it worked to me. Perfect.
Yep. Like it. So as we move on, let's see what's the next thing to worry about. And that is basically the fact that we have moved out the secrets from appearing, in the Dockerfile, which is something you want to protect, like anything, like you're not hard coding APIs keys in your app.js or whatever source code you're using as an example. But we made the token available in another way, right? By basically leaving it off existing as the history of all of the data, the metadata that made the Docker image itself built. So how do we see that? So if I do Docker history, Node.js tutorial, and I can see what was going on there, right? And this gives me a kind of like this, these are like commits, right? These are like basically my way to reproduce or see what went on there, how that image was created. So obviously this data isn't shipped off with your container image, but it is available on the Docker host that used to build it. So now you should ask yourself, if you're doing or practicing threat modeling, the next question you'd ask is, what happens if my CI that used to build Docker images or whatever was compromised, or a Docker developer's machine was compromised? I'm not going to go into those, but it's something to ponder about. So we see it here in case, there we go. Where is it? There we go.
Yep.
Okay, so it's just there 56 seconds ago. Makes sense. So let's move on with this, rabbit hole. The next thing is, you might want to basically, which we haven't talked about, the problem of the image itself having the .npmrc inside it. So when you ship it, it exists as a layer of the container image. So while it's not in the running container, data set itself, it is in the image itself. So what happens if someone gains access to that image? So one way to do it, it's basically to say, well, I want to delete it. So I'm adding my npmrc token here, and then after I did everything I needed, maybe I'll go ahead and remove it so it doesn't exist on the container itself. Right. When it's running, in production, no one can do directory traversal and get it or whatever. Let it build. It will go ahead. It will remove it. So if I would run this now, I would say that I don't really have access to that.
Yep.
So what were ways to basically mitigate this concern, right? If I did Docker push at this point, of course, to our point, what would happen is that this image would now get sent into a registry like Docker Hub, and then that is what you want to protect: the fact that no one should be able to have access to this image, because while the 1, 2, 3, 4 token doesn't exist in your running container, it still exists in the history of whatever layer is used to build that image. So far, so good.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is the token we're pointing out, and
I like it.
Yeah, and a more elaborate, I guess, point here is how do we actually prevent secrets from ever being on an image in general, right? At all. So one way in general a rule to basically build, Docker files or Docker images in a good way is to practice this .docker ignore, which I find it funny that I also put the Docker ignore itself inside it. And I want to ignore some of the things. And some of them are best practices technically as well as security. For example, there's no reason you should be copying over node modules to an existing container, because you want to install on the container itself, and from that take the node modules. So it may seem as sometimes something that is unharmful, but I've personally, as a Node.js developer, I've personally had to sometimes open node modules after installing them, like going to specifically the node modules directory and maybe patch or update some code because I wanted to test something or fix something specifically. And if I had built a container out of my dev machine or something and then pushed it over, it would basically take all of those modules, my patched ones, and then use them as the source. So that's one obvious way of avoiding this as well. As well as other things. You do not want your log file, and the Dockerfile itself may have some tells, so you don't want it there. And of course the .npmrc one, right? We don't want to get into a case where we push in all of these tokens. So here's where I'm getting into. This is a new capability, right, Peter? This is out of build kit and things like that, which some people told me they needed to have a flag to enable. But this whole thing basically enables you to mount secrets when you are building a specific layer. So it doesn't stay there anymore. And so this is adding, an extra layer of security.
Yes.
So before we had this, I think one of the ways that we had built container images was with multi-stage builds. So what I did was basically separate. Think of this, and then another one, and this will be as build, and this will be my production one. I could do whatever I want to take the latest, or I never want to take the latest really, but I could take something else like specific version that I know that I can actually build safely on, etc. And I could have all of my installs here, right? This I don't really care about. All of my installs and everything here, and then run my container here where I don't do the installs. I just copy paste basically the node modules that I created here into this point, and I don't need the whole this stage, right? I just do copy. Don't remember the exact syntax for that, but basically, from artifact build into this area, and basically I take all of the node modules from there. So if I had done this, this would have been a good way to basically use multi-stage builds for both purposes of having smaller, production purposely built images, as well as not having any container related, any sensitives like security token related data in my, finally built image, and that is what I will push to production. And at that point, the only reason that you will have sensitive information still on your host will be kind of like dangling Docker images that are like small layer containers. But if you practice, after building an image, to prune it, like remove any residue like that, that's a good way of basically eliminating the whole threat of someone compromising, that state.
Ginani is loving your hat, by the way.
Thank you. Glad it's making headwaves here.
No pun intended.
No, not at all. All right, so let me move into more of, we've covered a bit more of, the best practices, and we'll have links on, step-by-step tutorial taking you step 1 till 10 of how to build, best practices with Docker. But I do want to focus, since we want to hack containers here, live running different ways of hacking a container that I'm pretty sure you haven't thought about and haven't seen anywhere else. And that is, why are you not fixing your vulnerable Node.js Docker images? I could not think of a better meme for this one. If you find that, Peter, ping me.
I will. That's pretty good, though. I like this one.
Cool. So what am I trying to say here, right? We do from Node 14, right? This is the base tag that we have decided of the Node.js version that works for us for production. And we add image magic inside because, remember, we actually want to have converting images in our source code, and we're mounting it correctly with the secrets, and we're building it right. But several areas that I now want to point out where threats become reality. First of all, what are vulnerable dependencies you have in the container itself? So this is not even related to the container, right? This is not even related to the app. This is basically you using vulnerable NPM dependencies in our case, because this is a Node one, in production that could result in your app being compromised, subsequently your container being compromised, subsequently someone moving laterally or otherwise escaping a container host, and so on and so on. This makes sense so far. What about vulnerable software that you're just adding to your container, right? How many times have you given enough thought on what software you're building into the container that might have vulnerabilities? Like, image magic is very common, right? It's a library, it's CLI, it's been there for like, 2 decades, 3 decades, or something like that. It's useful. CMS has used this for CMS or content management system like WordPress and Drupal and all of those things. They use it because it's a good way of basically just I'd say moving the responsibility of converting images and manipulating it into a purposely built library like ImageMagick. But it has tens of vulnerabilities, like, I don't want to say endless, but virtually endless. All the time new vulnerabilities coming in. And maybe we're now adding a vulnerable version of ImageMagick to the container itself. But that's not all. How about vulnerabilities coming to the container from the base image itself? Right? Because Node 14.10.1 comes with built-in data on itself. The data is libraries, and that's, again, more tools. Like, maybe part of your workflow is that you need to clone a repository. For example, you built an app that analyzes commits. I'm pretty sure most of the time people will find it much easier to do child process spawn git and run some commands on it, right? Then write a whole protocol or use a library to analyze it and do it. And then what happens when you need to do it off the main thread and whatever. So people do that. What happens when the Git itself, the Git CLI, is vulnerable, which happens, again, Git has some vulnerabilities on it. So there's that. But the last one, right? What happens if the Node runtime itself is vulnerable? I'm pretty sure, people have never even thought about this, right? And I'm being extreme here. I know some people are thinking about it and so on, but most of the time when I'm talking to developers, what do they care about when they build an image? This almost never comes up, right? This is something people just expect. Well, I'm using Node, it will work. I mean, should I use 15 because it has ESM, or 14 or whatever? No one thinks about the fact that Node itself is vulnerable sometimes, right? I mean, it has security vulnerabilities and advisories coming out, every quarter or so. So this is something for us to be vulnerable. So is 14.10.1 vulnerable or not? Do you know this when you're running in production? This is what I want to talk about.
Yeah. I have no idea. Let's see.
Okay,
but I think, I mean, just piling on to your point, right? I think to be honest, right? In years past, no, I didn't worry, right? Oh, it's a base image. Yeah, we're good. Let me just worry about what I put in it. And I think that's shifting a lot nowadays, correct?
It is. I think we're seeing more awareness on understanding what to use and how to use it.
Yeah.
All right, so I have something running. Not create container for setting the container name is creating. Let's see. Is it goof right scale? Or Mongo? Which one was it? Okay. And it says too many demos in one day, and I need to like, which one is it? It's not goof itself. Anything else? Let's go.
Goof star.
Yeah, so many containers, so many demos. Let's go ahead and remove this one entirely. I think it's done. Okay. Almost. Yeah, let's see. Okay, we have enough running, I think. Let's give it a go. What's going on? More data. Oh, there we go. We have a running application, goof application.
Yes.
I'm going to run through some of these fairly quick because I have a bunch of demos that I want to show you. So first off, this is like past Dockerfile. This is us basically using maybe a bad Dockerfile, a bad node image, and I want to show you how we kind of go through some of these things. So let me pull off code here. ZSH is so slow because I'm always initiating that Java version, which I probably need to change. But so this is my app. This is a Node.js app. You see, this is the one, and it's using some vulnerable packages. Specifically, it has this about new route, which I created, which uses a Dust. There we go. A template engine, which I'm using to basically render all of this server side and send it to you. And I have this input, a conditional that says, if the device is the desktop, draw it a smaller way. If the device is mobile, draw it large way. So it is as simple as basically doing this. Big, right? Oh, missing something.
I've never used Dust.
I haven't used Dust.
It's a
great package.
The Node ecosystem moves so fast.
Yeah, it's an older one. This is library by LinkedIn. It's
okay,
not very well maintained by now, but still gets downloaded quite a bit. And you see it has a couple of vulnerabilities in it and so on. So probably not what I'd advise you to choose, Peter, if you were building something, but good that we now know why. Yeah. So this is user input, and I can go ahead and influence this user input. And I'm going to take you really quickly through this to just show you, what exactly is happening here. So I can do things like maybe I want to try and escape it, like desktop, or I'm trying to like escape it with this, with this single quote, maybe things like that. Does it work? No. I don't know. Let's try. This is user input at all. That whatever doesn't work. So. Don't lose faith yet. Don't lose faith. We are going to hack this. It doesn't work, but let's see why, right? So I've got this ready for a demo. You can see that, first of all, two things. Dust was created in a very secure, in a very secure manner, right? Security was part of like its, shining goals. So it has this escape HTML function, which, if something is a string, it will go ahead, test it if, it's clean or not. If it's not, it will clean it up with escaping. So this is basically output encoding it. That's why some things doesn't work, and then it returns it back. So far, so good. Not really, but I'll show you in a second what happens there. And then it has this, the way that I'm actually able to do like if condition, something, equals desktop. and this conditional logically happening server side, then Node sends back the conditionals after they were evaluated. This happens because we have a Dust helper called if, which, as you can see, it gets this chunk, and then there we go. This is the condition, gets evaluated. What happens when this is user input controlled? You guessed it. That's probably code injection, because we are running eval on the runtime on the server side on Node. So hopefully we're not getting to to this condition like that. But hope is one thing and reality is another.
Yeah, so true. No true words have been said.
So I'm going to give 2 seconds, because I want to move on with so many demos of hacking these containers. So 2 seconds on what is going on here. Can someone tell me what is the vulnerability? Maybe 5 seconds while I read the questions on the stream.
Okay, you go look over there. I'm going to try and answer it. So function type of s equals string, characters.test s.
Okay, cool. All right, that's it. We need to move on.
Oh,
okay, cool. So when are we, you should ask yourself, when are we not sanitizing the string that's giving to us? Basically when something is not a string, right? And then we pass whatever we got as is. But that's kind of weird. Like, why would something not be a string? And this something is not something, abstract. This is like the device. Like, this is a string. Whatever I put here, this is a string at the end of the day. That's how I use it. This is not like strongly typed, URL parameters or whatever. Except there's one case, right? What happens if this is an array? Who had never used it, right? Every developer have probably used, one time in their lives, right? This array notation, bracket or n device equals something else. Mm-hmm. At that point, it is semantically, right, telling the server, right? This is the semantics of HTTP and all of those things, that this is an array. This is a list of values that we need to use. And at that point, this is where this function fails, and this is the vulnerability. But let me show you how this vulnerability manifests itself. So I will go over to my lovely curl, and I probably says localhost 3001. Probably have this saved. Yeah. So you have this request I'm sending, and you can see that this is just representing the response in the same way. Like, we haven't done yet anything. But the moment that I'll add a string that should be sanitized, that might get into that eval statement and will cause an incorrect code on JavaScript side, this is where a thing fail. You see, this is now syntax or unexpected identifier. I can show you quickly how it looks like here when you add something like like strings that mess up the code, right? This is what we've seen before. So now we have basically created a situation where we are injecting code. What happens if I do something like this? Is basically me trying to, if I remembered how to do this correctly, I am basically closing the tag of the mobile strings, then concatenating console log 1 on the server side, getting evaluated, and continuing this, because this helps me over here, right? This addresses this syntax. So this is me basically now hacking the app. And while nothing happened here and everything went just fine with the request itself, you can see that I've now on the Docker logs for that container, I've actually now ran one as a console log running on the server side. So nothing stops me at this point from doing require child process, and you can see where I'm going with it, right? So spawning command, reading your environment variables, whatever I want to do at this point.
Yeah,
we good there? Yeah.
Yeah, just totally. That's crazy, right? You're
Yep.
You would think in 2021, right, that we wouldn't have these these code injection problems, but yeah, and I think it's what you're addressing here, packages that we bring in, a lot of the issues, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it's scary. It's scary if you can just run.
It is.
And then if you didn't have incorrectly in your when you built your container, if you're using the wrong user with high privileges, it can just Hey, why don't you just cat back the password file, right?
Okay, send it over to wherever you want.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on, another one. And what I showed you is, this is what we wanted to do, right? Like basically hack the container itself based on what it had as using, vulnerable packages. But let's move on. Let's say we were using, secure packages, like everything is up to date, no vulnerabilities. What about the container itself, which is where we started with, right? Like packages that exist on the container. Like at this point, the app that I'm just going to show you is doing nothing bad in terms of the app logic itself. So I built this image. Let me run this really quick. Run. There we go. So this is running on a different port. It's a Fastify app. Let me run this quickly. Host. And I think it's over at /public. There we go. But this is a really simple application. And what we're going to do here is take a look quick. This Fastify app, really, I've just like minimized this. You can see this is the entire app. The whole thing that it does is uses an upload route, gets input in terms of any files that we send it, and it converts it. Even like this is using the correct exec file secure API, and not concatenating commands or things like that. You could argue, I'm not sanitizing the file output, and maybe this is like user controlled and the name itself of the file, but this is not a vulnerability that we're going to talk about. The vulnerability itself manifests somewhere else. So let's upload a file and see what happens. I'm going to choose, but I do want to, first of all, connect into this running container. I'll open more of these in advance. Exec. And see, these are the files that I have in the container once I've built it. I have an uploads directory and all of those things and nothing else. I'm going to go and do choose file RCE1. And what will I get? Let's see if I get something. All of them. Okay, great. Let's use this as the entire path for it. And I have the exploit directory here. I have RC1 here. So I'm going to go and resize it. Now, this went amazingly well. Hey, it resized the image. It doesn't look really well, but functionally this worked. What happens is if let's again see what files I have on the container itself. I can now see that I have RCE1 created as a new file on the container, on the running container itself. Why did this happen? Let's see. I'll zoom in here.
Yeah, thank you.
Because this is a vulnerability that exists and exploits a capability in ImageMagick called delegate. It's a way for ImageMagick as a library to say, I want to define semantically how to build this image, basically fill it with the data from this URL, but it has this vulnerability called image tragic that has made waves. And what it allows you to do is this improper input sanitization on the ImageMagick itself doesn't really sanitizes this. So it allows me to run commands on the container or whatever host runs this, like touch RCE1, which on Linux just basically says, create an empty file, call it RCE1, which is what we did here. So the entire vulnerability manifesting on this running container simply and only because I created, I've used the container that has this issue. So I do want to move on to another example, and that would be, what can we do at this point? So maybe I want to move to a different image. Let's try that. Let's move to a different image. And let's fix this vulnerability and move to a different one.
Got a quick question while you're typing that out. So how to build an image for production and development using a single Docker file? Yeah, great question. I get to ask that a lot, right? And it's a lot of developers come into the container world trying to do just this. It's not very easy, right? I have some other earlier shows that I'll grab the links and post them out. We did talk a little bit about that last week, but mostly we're talking about building your secure production containers. But yeah, I think we should do a full show around that on how to set up your local development and then seamlessly move into production. A great video on that is from AWS. Let me see, migrating to the cloud using the Docker CLI. Inside of that, we talk about building images for local and for production. But yeah, I think a dedicated show around that would be great. Thank you for the question and watching today.
So actually, I do want to see. I think we have a few more minutes. I do want to.
Yeah, what we're doing, Nisha, stay tuned. We got, I think the next 3 shows, having a bunch of folks on, Python developers. We're going to talk all things Python, how to build local development containers, how to build production containers, how to approach that using Compose, how to orchestrate those together. Yeah, so we have a lot of Compose stuff coming up. I mean, excuse me, Python. And then we also have some VS Code. The lead developer from VS Code Docker extension is going to be on. We're going to take a look at VS Code and Docker in depth. So stay tuned. Yeah, we have a bunch of Python stuff coming. All right. Sorry, Liran, back to you.
No worries. So I do want to try another one. I have like a dozen of containers here running. And this one is a remote reverse shell. I want to see if we can get that to work. Basically, I'm uploading a different payload here called RCE2. If it works, let's see, and then I'll explain what exactly it does. So I'm going to go upload it, and then I'm going to click resize. Now, to explain what is going on here, what I'm attempting to do, at least, is as follows. So this payload, what it does is it connects back to my container. This is just because we have enabled Docker networking between the host and the containers running. So it connects back. It has this magic DNS, which allowing me to do this. And it's download this RSH and running it. So instead of doing touch, RC1, we're doing all of this. Now, why do I need to do this? Because let's see what RCE1 does.
Nasty. I can just see that's going to be nasty.
It is. I like this. This example. So what r.sh does is, and this was a tricky one for me to build this exploit, because I did not have netcat enabled in that container image, vanilla. So I needed to do it. I'd like to build it. So I had to like serve. So this is why I'm actually running serve here, because part of my exploit payload is basically the container is now running a command to get netcat. So I've exposed a server that does that. Just serve static files. It gets netcat, which is a networking, command line utility thing. Compiles it, does the whole thing from source thing, and then it runs with it back bash, enabling bash as a shell for me to use. So I don't know. Let's see if the demo guys are here. I don't know. I think not, just because. Oh, there we go. We have it. So I was doing this before. So this is me just basically before serving the files on the exploits directory, so it can get all of the payload here, which basically for me was exploits. Come on. Here we go. So all of this, RSH and netcat, and then in this other window, what I was doing is running netcat in a listening mode on this port. And now you don't see my prompt because this is, not the thing here, but I can do ls-alh, which shows you a lot of like whatever is going on there, to do pwd and see what's going on. Now, this is the container itself. This is not me, on my machine. This is the container itself. You cd back and run it. And now I have basically enabled a remote reverse shell on a live running container just by the ability of exploiting a vulnerability in ImageMagick. That's it. No application, no dependencies. That we've passed that point. That is okay. But the container is now being vulnerable, and this is what I can do with it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It is. So yeah, now I'm going to stop this container. I did wanted to show this one. And next thing we're going to try, we have a few more minutes. I'll do this one quickly.
You're totally fine on time. Don't worry. This is awesome. If we go over at the top of the hour, no problem.
All right. This is the cool part. Or we are going to try and exploit the node runtime itself. What do you think about that one, Peter?
Yeah, I like it.
Cool. So let's see how we do it. Okay, so I had to go back in time. Which favorite moving back in time movie do you like? Is it Back to the Future? Come on, tell me, which one is it?
Absolutely, Back to the Future.
That one.
I was waiting for the day where I get to get automatically pump up shoes that tie by themselves and a flying skateboard. I mean, come on. What else do you need as a 16-year-old kid when we watch that movie? Giving
You
away
would have
my
think
age.
we would have had that hoverboard by now, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
2020 treated us really bad.
Yeah. Yeah, Uzi,
Okay.
do not use image magic. Would be my unprofessional, non-security expert opinion.
Yeah, this is don't use that. This if anyone wants to dig in, this is the image tragic vulnerability that people have. You know how it is with security, right? They coin terms for vulnerabilities like shell shock and things like that, heartbleed, when they want to raise awareness, and this is what they did back then. And the really cool thing about this demo, and this is why I used Node 6 here. The really cool thing, I did not even install. This is what we hacked, right? This is the Dockerfile for what we hacked. And it did not even do, apt get install image magic. It just exists bundled by default in that specific image. Maybe it has, maybe there are other image tags for Node that this exists in. I didn't check, but on this one, it does exist. So this is you being vulnerable by default if you have implemented something as simple as, as this. Just using converting a file. This is not a problem of a insecure coding. This is a problem of the image magic being vulnerable.
Yeah, yeah. And I've used image magic in production applications multiple times, 100%.
Yep. For sure.
And Node 6. There's probably a lot of production code running Node 6 out there. 100%.
I hope not.
You know how it is, right?
It is like that.
If it's working, folks are not going to touch it. But yeah.
Okay. At this point in time where we have exploited a lot of things, it's my cue to take. Do you know what this is, Peter?
Nutella. Yes, of course.
Okay.
How dare you? Of course, my kids eat that by the gallons. I swear. Yeah.
Same. I'm sorry. I can't move on before taking a few more of this.
Yeah.
It's too much of a security risk for me to code if I did not add few sugar levels.
Yeah, you need sugar. But are you the opposite, right? If you eat sugar, it calms you down. Me, yeah. Well, let me say hello to some people. Man, I got to learn how to pronounce Satahara. Thank you. Hey, all.
And another read it well.
And Linsky. That's pronounced with my American accent. Hello. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, exactly. Image magic is very vulnerable for sure.
Scary.
100%. Yeah.
Is Uziel Bueno. When I find you at a conference at some point, reach out and we are gonna go and rip this one off. You, me, and Peter, because this is the only way to handle security issues. A download of sugar and chocolate. All right, so I don't know. Did we forget about exploiting Node as a runtime? What's going on?
No, let's go for it. I want to see this 100%.
All right, so we went back in time to Node 6 and found a vulnerable image that we could exploit. At this point, maybe you checked it and you have by some magical way found which image you want to move to. I don't know how you're making those decisions. I can tell you at the end of the video how to make those decisions, scientifically based on data. But before we move to that point, let's say you move to a different image. So what would you move to, Peter? Would you want to choose an image you'd go for?
I would go look at Sneak's vulnerabilities. I would probably run. Maybe I know a little bit of the answer, but hopefully I'm not wrong here. Wow, he put me on the spot. I would go scan. I would choose 8.50.
I love that. That's a very specific one, as if I had told you before to use this.
We have a mind meld going on. But
there we go. There we go.
I'll give you my real answer. What I was probably going to think is, without thinking about these things and talking about these things, security, right? I would go, I'm just going to go latest, make sure, I can work, I can run. Oh, I'm broke, probably, right? Because this is on 6, and then back it out somehow, right? But yeah, that's tedious. Yep.
Cool. So let's say that we have chosen, we are back in Node 6, right? So our latest is basically Node 5.0. Is that good with you?
Yeah, that's perfect. And you pronounce his name way better than I do. He's definitely going to take you up on a bucket of Nutella next time.
Yay. Awesome. Where are you from? While I build this image, it's gonna take me time to download it, I guess.
Yeah. Good morning, Jay Tong. Yeah, we have another Gerardo. Yeah, it is hard setting up your development environment, making changes in containers and having that across your whole team, right? And then moving it into production. So that's another vote. I'm going to take that as a vote for we should do a show all setting up local development using one compose file, one build, one Docker file as much as possible and go through all the options. Yeah. I'm going to move us back to the side. I like this view better.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, okay, this is still the vulnerable app. This is only just putting this stuff very recently, but I think we can try and hack it now. So back into what we were trying to do, right? We hacked this running container based on vulnerable dependencies. We then moved on to fixing all of them, maybe, but then hacked it based on image magic, which was vulnerable default on the image itself. And now we are going to see how we're basically hacking the app based on the fact that we have only used a vulnerable runtime version of Node itself, which when we moved back from 6 to the latest version, we moved up to 8.5.0 because this was the latest version, or maybe someone chose it for whatever reasons they wanted. So we've built this container like that, and the app is, or should be, functional in the same way. Like this isn't anything new. Yeah, this is just build it and running it, and this is just working. So let's see. I don't know. Let's see. Let's Google a bit. Node.js 8.5.0 security vulnerability. Will I find many things? One from Snake. Am I gonna find one that has this one? Path validation vulnerability. This is the one.
That was beautiful, by the way. I don't have many guests that have right to left text in Google.
It's defaulting to my country, which is
yes, yeah, that's beautiful. And I think someone was asking, where are you from?
Myself.
Yes, I'm from the U.S. If you haven't noticed by the horrible mix of Texas Eastern accent, but where are you hailing from, Liran?
I'm from Israel.
Beautiful.
Where it's very much vaccinated at this point.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah, hopefully we're getting out of this situation.
Yes.
Hi, Udiel from Mexico.
Hey, Mexico.
So we had found, now I'm telling you that choosing 8.5.0 wasn't, that smart of a decision because, it has a vulnerability, a path validation vulnerability that exists due to the way that the path module, if you do const path, requires path, like the core module from Node. It has some invalidation issues, which depending on how you use it, some of these vulnerable methods in community modules like Send and others that are using it are vulnerable to this. What does it actually mean, right? So I know this is path traversal. So let me go back to my shell here, and for the sake of time, I'm gonna just copy paste some of this payload which we used before. What I'm basically gonna do here, and still pray and hope this demo still works, is I am reaching to my pre-112 live running container, which here it is, right? 112. I have this under the public directory. But now what I want to do is escape it. So %2e is basically ... So I'm moving up basically out of user source app, which is, if you look at my Dockerfile, this is what it is, right? And this little trick of adding some weird name of whatever you could choose, full bar, whatever, and then moving up again gets exploiting basically the logical error that path module has and got wrong. And then I can do anything like /etc password and get whatever I want. This is it.
Crazy. Yeah.
Crazy, because I have now path traversal on a running container simply because of the fact that I used Node 8.5.0, which is a vulnerable runtime that allows me path traversal. This is it. This is the whole story here.
Yeah, and it that's one of the scenarios, the first scenarios you hear about a security, is traversing paths and sending files back to the, right? And 8.5, I wonder when that came out. That's not super old, and at least in my lifespan of developing, right? It's not 25 years old. Node is not that old.
It's not, and like I mean, it's end of life and things like that. No, but I can imagine there are different, like I hope no one is running Node 6, but Node 8, I'm pretty sure some people are still running in production somewhere. Let alone maybe on-premise kind of hybrid deployments, which people don't upgrade too often anyway.
Right.
But at this point, like etc password is, it's a nice, gimmick to show you path traversal in the container. There's nothing, interesting specifically here. But I could just as well get any file, right? I could go ahead and get the server.js file, which here it is. I've now basically, I know where it is. So I can do user source go server.js, or, just can, enumerate a bunch of these until I find it. And then I see the entire code that's deployed on the container. So now think about it. What happens when your container has all of this information? I can get the package JSON, the log file. I can see which modules you're using, which config you're using, all of those things that help me now move from path traversal and escalate the vulnerability into a hack that I could actually make useful in terms of, well, now I can maybe do a reverse shell because I found another vulnerability or something else.
Yeah.
So I did forget to add Dockerfile here. I wanted to show you this, but if you scanned it, so how do you find those things, right? If you do Docker scan, node 850 or something like that, then this is the output. You get a ton of vulnerabilities existing in the base image itself. So obviously things that you should triage, prioritize, and fix and whatever. But also we tell you about all of those vulnerabilities that exist in node 850, and it is vulnerable because. So specifically, this version is vulnerable because of path traversal, but it has other vulnerabilities. Like there's like a denial of service here, and unauthorized file access, and information exposure, and buffer overflow, and who knows what else you could do with some of this, right?
Yeah.
And what I do want to take you on, and this is when this kind of will finish, is what do we do at this point, right? How do we mitigate the issue? So while that is running, I'll go back to my slides. So we don't need to wait too long, right? But this is basically all that we've done, right? We've hacked the app in different ways. And then what I did now is this Docker scan command that I ran. Let me put that full screen for a second, right? And gave it a Docker file. I now tell it, this is a different example with Node 14.10.1, which you could have chosen, but it has vulnerabilities itself too, right? And Node, by the way, is vulnerable in that version as well. But the really great thing about what is happening here, and this is, I think, the biggest takeaway, right? This is the fact that you now have, when you know Node 14 is vulnerable or Node 850 is vulnerable, what do you do next, right? Which base image are you going to move? Node 15, Node 14.20, I don't know. Maybe they're also vulnerable. You have no idea. So if you run this command like this, you provide a Docker file, we know what you're using, we can safely recommend you other alternative base images to move into. For example, if you had chosen Node 14.16, like the example here, Buster Slim, it has 58 vulnerabilities. So it's not perfect, but it's better than shipping your production up with 624, right? So you're already at the starting point, beginning in a great way.
Right.
So maybe that command finished or not, but there we go, it did. So this is the results for 850, right? This is basically the biggest I've seen, I think, in a while. But 1,000 vulnerabilities, and I love the beauty thing here, right? Like we tell you, you can move to 8.16, and the reason we're still telling you to stay on 8 is because sometimes, if you move to Node 12, maybe that's a breaking API change. So we still try to give you like minor upgrades to protect you as much as possible. But if you can try major upgrades or alternative base images, that is might be putting you at a better spot, and you could try moving to one of those as well. So this is database decisions you will be making based on input here from Docker scan.
Yeah, I love that too, right? If you can't, you might say, oh, the best 12. What is it? 12.21. Well, I can't go to 12 because it breaks my app, and I don't have the time. So yeah, might take a look at 8.16. You drop what, about 1,000 vulnerabilities?
Yep. It's a good starting point. That's like
Yeah.
a really great win that you should celebrate anytime, either with Nutella or coffee or whatever. I'm
Yeah.
just suggesting there.
I have a question for you. So when you do get that right, so if I first see, oh, even 800 vulnerabilities, right? Developers might think I need zero. I need zero across the board, right? What's your thoughts around that? I know it's not an exact science, but maybe some thoughts to our listeners on how to kind of approach that, of what is too high, what's too low, that type of thing.
Yeah. I would say if you have a magic way or a practical way of getting into zero vulnerabilities or whatever low number you're satisfied with, I mean that's fine. But the other real perspective to it is you need to make sure that you're not going into kind of like paralysis analysis in terms of you're trying to move to 500 and then you try to optimize and to move to 400 and then 24 and could I remediate this? And at that point, it's just taking you towards spending days and weeks and months in removing the number of vulnerabilities without having prior context. So maybe it's fine. I'm just saying this, right? Maybe it's fine that you have lib, GCC, whatever, the compiler of C, have a buffer overflow vulnerability. Maybe it's fine because you're not really compiling anything on, as it's part of like the base image itself. So that's a low vulnerability. You could take that risk. Part of security, by the way, is accepting risks and mitigating risks. Part of that is saying, I'm fine moving on to production with 55, vulnerabilities, as long as, I know what are those highs. Maybe I'll focus my time to prioritize, the 9 highs rather than spend it and to an extent maybe waste it on trying to mitigate 41 vulnerabilities, which really have absolutely low chances of them exploiting the container itself.
Right. So like an analogy, I could, if I was afraid of the world and I wanted to be 100% secure, well, I could take all the doors and windows out of my house, right, and just live in a brick house.
Yeah,
that's not very practical. But if the highs, right, I might have, don't leave your garage door wide open. Don't leave the front door and back door wide open, unlocked, no door, maybe, right? Yes, you should address those first. And then maybe the little bit of a crack that's in a top window that you need a, 20-foot ladder degree. I don't know. My analogy is breaking down, but that's kind of how I start to think of it.
I like that.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that was a nice ride, Peter, taking through all of those levels.
Yes. Let me turn this off. Fantastic. Yes. If I ever get to India, it's surprising. I've worked with coworkers and contract companies in India. We have a huge Docker community in India. They do meetups. It's insane, and have like thousands of people show up to meetups for Docker meetups, CNCF meetups. Right. It's pretty cool. Yeah, I would love to go. Soon as this thing that's happening out in the world, they're making us all sick. As soon as that goes away, I will be flying around. I am definitely coming to Israel to see you, sir.
For sure. That's the date.
Yeah. Another place I've been dreaming to come visit. 100% beautiful. I mean, I've only seen it remotely and talked to people that have visited, and they only have great things to say. So, well, thank you, sir. I really appreciate it. Tell everybody where they can find you on the internets if they want to reach out.
Cool. I'm on Twitter just like the rest of the universe. Liran_Tal. Ping me, reach out, ask questions about Docker. When you do that, I'll then tag Peter so I can harass him, and then he can answer you as well as me.
Absolutely.
So definitely do that, and reach out, ask any questions. DMs are fine as well. If you're shy, let's make a conversation.
Awesome. Yeah. And you can follow me on Twitter. Great place to reach out. Tweet at me, DM me. Also join our community Slack. Great place to find information, to get help. All of our, not all, but a lot of engineers are in there. Our captains are in there. And then just the community at large, right there. It's a great community, very active, very helpful. It's a very welcoming community. So please join there. That's the best place to kind of kick off. If you have any roadmap, I always like to talk about our roadmap. Check out our roadmap. We talked about it last week at the All Hands, right, from our top execs at the company. So we do use that. That is our public roadmap. Go in there, look at features that are coming up, what we're working on, add any issues in there, feature requests that you'd like to see. Great place to interact with the whole Docker team. And last but not least, really excited for this year. DockerCon 2021 coming up here in the end of May. We've extended the call for papers. The CFP is still open. Please submit your talks. And I always like to say this too. We do look for first-time speakers. So if you haven't given a talk, I know DockerCon is a big conference and a lot of attendees. Don't let that worry you. We have people on staff that we can help you out, craft your talk, help you with speaking. So please submit a talk. We're more worried about the content and delivering great value to DockerCon attendees, right? So we can help work you through the talk. But yeah, please submit your talks. But sign up, pre-register. I think we're going to open up full registry here pretty soon. So that's it. That's all I have. Great for coming back. Thank you so much. These two. If you are a Node.js developer, please go back and watch the last show from 2 weeks ago. Come back to this show. Follow along. There's nuggets of gold in these past two talks. Just really, really good talks around Node.js, how to think about containers, how to think about your production containers, how to think about vulnerabilities, right? So it's just a whirlwind tour. You will be the expert at your company in security in Node.js after just these two live shows. And you can send checks or Venmo. How do people pay each other nowadays? No, I'm just kidding. Thanks everybody so much.
Bitcoins.
What's that? Bitcoin. Yes, that Bitcoin. Thanks so much for everybody joining for interacting. Liran, we're definitely going to have you back on for sure.
Awesome. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
All right. Take care. Everybody have a great